Have you guys experienced this when you start communicating back your performance, your SLA performance towards SLAs?
Right.
Because first off, when you haven't done it, sometimes those meetings could be a little contentious because everybody kind of has in their head what they should be as opposed to what you've got agreed, right? But you go down the process and you got them kind of set up, and you have your first meeting and then your second meeting, your third meeting, and you kind of start to explain, well, this is what's going on. This is our overall performance. It's been my experience that is a great way to kind of, if you will, put some water on the heat, right? Because then what happens is the leadership of the organization you provide the service to starts to get an understanding, number one, of, well, first off, what the volume of demand that they're putting on your organization, right, in terms of incidents and changes and problems and requests and that sort of thing, and then that you do respond to them well, and it's no longer driven by the exception, right? Because and that goes a long way. So sometimes, usually by the third meeting, they've got a really good understanding of the total performance of the organization. Whereas before, it might have been one individual said, well, I gave my ticket to Mark and he hasn't done anything about it, right? Or those guys in IT, I gave them a ticket and, it's been weeks, right? And maybe it has been weeks, but not all tickets have been weeks, right?
No, exactly.
Right. And when you can have that meeting with your constituent, right, or the people who you provide service for, it really goes a long way to, dare I say, depoliticize a lot of service issues and gets them to a point where I think they can start to trust you a little bit more to perform your service, right? You start to develop a better working relationship, I guess, with your constituents.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think one of the key things in there is you need a process, for problem solving, right?
Yeah.
And I remember getting trained years ago on Kepner-Trago, which is a problem solving tool, that works and it does what it needs to do. But what I always like to look back on is this situation reminds me of another situation I was in, and try to bring back from that and how I solve that problem. But to write things down, I think, is critical, and understand what that means. Where are the things going to get clogged? Where are the blocking points on this? Once we know what we got to do. The longest, an old term that was used probably a million times in my career is, what's the longest pole in the tent to get this thing solved, right? And it sometimes it's you need to get a part in to get this thing fixed so we can get this thing going again. Sometimes it's because when you talk about software issues, it's not always the software, it's the hardware or the firmware that's embedded within that complex problem that you're dealing with. And it's not just visible. There's not a red light that's going to go on and say, here's the problem, look at me, okay, let's just fix that. No, it's going to be, you got to, maybe you wrote some special code on top of this that should work as worked before, but it's not working today. Why? And you have to go through that problem solving. You break it down. Who all is involved, and who is a long pole in the tent, and understanding those factors to give to the customer, that end customer, so they know, I understand the problem, I can see the problem, I know what I'm working to get around the problem. And you're right, we had agreed on an SLA of 3 hours on this, but we're in our 6th hour, and clearly we don't have a solution yet. Right? So back off, let us work this problem, unless you want to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. Right? Yeah. And they'll usually just back off at that point. But it's having the ability to have those hard discussions with people when you're in a situation that clearly I'm not going to make my SLA. That's bad. We understand that. Yeah. Let's not make it worse by starting a bunch of other fires to confuse that fire, right? That's not going to make anybody any better or any smarter or get the problem solved. Let's deal with the problem at hand and don't get defocused. And people appreciate that and like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think the service level management process and establishing service level agreements is going to be a growing it's going to be a growing exercise for the organization, for providers, for the customers. Everybody is going to learn more at the end of it, and they'll realize that at the end of it, because as you were saying, Mark, you sit down in those first meetings and you lay out how we did in the last month or whatever, and people see red and nobody likes to see red, and they're going to be saying, well, this was the reason, and this, and oh, I counted these this way, and what you find is that the service and the things that are measured and the definition of specific things starts bubbling up, and then it gets where there are disagreements, those get scrubbed out, those get polished and agreed upon. And so after a few cycles and iterations, you find you are all speaking more of a common language with what uptime is, what downtime is, what exceptions are, what exceptions aren't. Your whole service is better defined for it, and people understand it better. I think that's one of the real benefits of it. And along those lines, I think one of the things that's very important to do when building service level agreements is to keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible, because you want to spend your time and energy delivering the service, not measuring how well you're delivering the service. And I think that to the extent possible that you can leverage whatever your ITSM tool is and let it perform the service level calculations is very, very important in going about establishing SLAs and managing to them.
Okay. And I just had another comment on that is, when you do your report out at the end of the month, or the weekly, whatever those, management wants to report to see what this was. When you take a look at how bad this SLA was, it was horrible. We doubled it. We went 6 days instead of 3 days, right? I like to ask the question in those meetings: what was the impact of that? Did production drop? Did we not do payroll? Did we miss? What did we miss? What went wrong? And then at that point, we say, do we need to adjust the SLA because we probably had too much heat on these guys to begin with? Let's soften it a little and then relook at it, because you have to. It's a give and take. It may be something else where we were shut down for 4 days. We didn't get payroll out. We had some issues with people threatening to sue us at work for us. Blah blah blah. Sure. Those now we have to tighten that SLA, or maybe simplify the number of fingers that are in that problem that was in there. Well, we got 2 sub vendors that are working with us. We don't need all that. Right. We were using an international group to do the programming on that. Maybe we don't need that for whatever application is a specific one that's causing the issue. Right. And you have to bring in common sense and clear heads, period.
Sure.